Hello and welcome to Beth Rigby Interviews. On this week's show, as the world marks a year since Russia invaded Ukraine, I speak to a man who found himself at the heart of the battle. Shaun Pinner is a former British soldier who joined the Ukrainian forces 4 years before the war. He was captured along with a fellow Briton, accused of being a mercenary and sentenced to death before being made to plead for both their lives on Russian television.
I beg on my behalf and Aidan Aslan's behalf to help us in an exchange.
3 months later, having been tortured and starved, the pair were released in a swap deal and returned to the UK.
We're now out of the danger zone and we're on our way home to our families and whatnot.
Shaun Pinner's journey from the British home counties to a Russian prison cell and a death sentence began 5 years ago when he moved to Ukraine, settled there and married. Having fought in the British Army, he joined the Ukrainian National Guard and then the Marines. A month before the war began last February, he told Sky News just how committed to the Ukrainian cause he was.
The guys know I'm not, a war tourist or a war junkie, and I'm with an organised unit, I'm with the government, and I'm with a contracted soldier. So I've integrated, so they know I'm not just, like I said, just sitting around and going to go home at the end of it. I've been here, my family's here. My family's 15 kilometres. I can hear the shelling from my front room.
Less than 2 months into the war, Shaun was captured by the Russians during the fall of Mariupol and, along with fellow Briton Aidan Aslan, was charged with being a foreign mercenary, convicted and sentenced to death. But after 5 months in Russian detention, during which time he was beaten, electrocuted and barely fed, Shaun was unexpectedly released in a prisoner swap deal brokered by Roman Abramovich. I spoke to him about his ordeal and his hopes for the future of Ukraine. Shaun, thanks very much for talking to us today. Now, this week will mark the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I want to talk to you today about the heroism, the suffering, the resilience of the Ukrainian people. But personally for you, it's kind of a miracle you're actually even sitting here, given the fact you were captured and what you went through. Because, I mean, some people watching this might think you ended up serving in the Ukrainian army as a sort of mercenary, but you're a hard gun, but you weren't that, were you?
No.
That was not what you were doing?
No. Initially, for 2 years, I was an instructor with the National Guard, worked with their sniper teams and surveillance teams out there. And then after that, the laws changed within Ukraine, so I could do a 3-year contract to get my residency, and by that time I was looking at getting married. For almost nearly 3 years before the invasion took place, I was out there doing routine deployments with the 1st Battalion of Marines of the Ukrainian Army.
So your friend sort of says, come out, you go out, you start working, you meet Larissa, your now wife. So before this happened, the Russian invasion, you're now building your life in Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is where you're going to spend the rest of your life, you think, yeah?
We learn the language.
Yeah.
I learnt Russian because most people in Mariupol speak Russian. So I was looking at finishing that contract and then starting to build my life in Mariupol and between here, England and Ukraine. It was a brilliant life. Let's
go back to February the 24th. What happened in those first few weeks for you? Where were you? What happened? How quickly did it build up?
Well, we got stood to at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we knew something was happening. And you practice this routine, but this one was for real.
Yeah.
You know, my boss had just speaks really good English, really good platoon commander. Leads by example, says, you've got to get to your positions, Russia come across the border. So I said, oh, bloody hell, it's on. But
what happens in that moment?
You're worried.
So much adrenaline,
yeah,
or are you scared,
everything.
or
yeah, everything. Your adrenaline's going. You're nervous. You're scared. You know, part of people go, oh, I'm scared. Oh, I was petrified. It's Russia. They told me it wasn't my fight, and they were going to move me back if I wanted to go. Somebody suggested that, and I said, I've been with you for 5 years. I'm not going anywhere. And my home's in Mariupol. How could I live with myself knowing that they're defending their home and I'm shipped out because I'm English back off the front line?
Mariupol, I mean, so it's your home. We all saw the pictures. the Russian siege that began on Mariupol pretty soon after the war began, and it went on until May, didn't it? It was just...
Yeah, as of
it was a beautiful city, and it was
Beautiful.
razed to the ground by the Russian army. When you go back to those early days, what was it unimaginable?
No combat experience could to prepare you for that, because whenever I'd fought anywhere, I'd always fought from a patrol base. We had air superiority.
Yeah.
This is different. My friend described it to me as, we're now the guys in sandals, we're now the Taliban, we're now ISIS. You know, this is how it was described to me, and I was like, yeah, you're dead right there. They'd just blown up a school, and it was there that really you saw the devastation that the Russians did all the way to Mariupol.
You've been in combat a lot.
Yeah.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
Nothing
then?
like it. Nothing like the carelessness of it, the bombing of schools all the way back from their front lines to Mariupol. You know, I saw a school with just the kids' coats hanging up and bags on there, where they'd been evacuated and put in a cellar, and they just hit the school, didn't care about it.
As a professional soldier, that must have been really hard, because there's kind of rules of combat, right?
Yeah.
Bombing children's schools.
Yeah.
You're used to combat.
Yeah.
You're trained for combat. But now you're going back and you're going home and you get there. You've described it in the past as a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, pretty much. This was in when we first pulled back to Mariupol, late February, early March.
Right, okay.
So within 2 or 3 days, the whole city sort of had really collapsed. It was just, they were hitting apartment blocks. The planes were doing the most damage. The rockets, you became aware of the noise. So if you heard the rocket coming in, it's already blown up. So you're going to be safe. You take cover, and then you just pray you'd heard that, because it's already, if you don't hear that, you're already dead.
And Shaun, at this point, where's Larissa, and what's happening to your home?
I knew she was okay, yeah. And I managed to get a call out to her eventually after that, saying that I think it's all over, around sort of March time. And we're surrounded, we've got no food, and if you don't hear from me, don't worry, I'm not dead, I could be captured. And she just said, fight, you're fighters, survive. She said, you brought the world's attention to Mariupol. You know, keep going, just survive. And she didn't cry, she was shouting down the phone really powerfully, saying, you guys are amazing, you're holding it. She just told us to fight and survive. So it was quite an emotional time.
When you made that call to her then, did you think that was it for you?
Yeah, pretty much.
So you're now under siege, you're in the steelworks. At this moment, you're being bombarded within an inch of your lives. Had you given up at that point, and then she kind of G'd you up again?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Everybody goes through ups and downs, and trying to motivate people when they're really surrounded, and the only way you're going to get out is you're either going to be dead or you're going to be captured. It's really hard to keep people motivated. You know, we'd gone down to under a sewerage works and split the team in half, so that we could escape the bombing and get some rest. And the bombing was just pounding, especially those final weeks. And they'd already been in reconnaissance, already been in 2 or 3 times, killed one of the guys in our team. And by the end of it, the tanks were coming in trying to blow holes through walls to try and get their infantry through into areas.
You've got no food, no water, you're
nothing. We were running
exhausted.
on empty then. They were just so close. They were other side of walls. We could hear them talking. And we were just waiting for them to come through. And it was really, really scary, you know.
So you're there, you're in the steelworks, they're coming for you. You're like, there's no way out of this.
No
right?
way out.
So then ultimately you try to break out, you try to escape. How does that happen? What happens as you prepare to leave? Like how, can you tell us what happened?
We were really on the last cusps of holding. I mean, the enemy had got within 50 metres, 30 metres, into old positions that we occupied at the start of the Mariupol siege. We were then on to maybe hand-to-hand combat, and so it was very, very close. And I think my commanding officer put out a appeal, and the brigade commander put out a appeal and said, look, we've run out of water, run out of ammo. If you can't get here, we're going to have to surrender. And it was never an option for me, my platoon commander, my team to surrender. We were going to try and break the first line and get out.
Why was it never an option for you?
Being British, I didn't want to surrender. I knew that they couldn't basically encircle the whole area. There would be gaps, and we all knew that. And we thought we'd take our chance. with it, and my battalions had orders to meet up with a sister battalion, the 501st, which was about 130 kilometres away. So their plan was to try and get there and join up with them and fight our way out.
I'm trying to sort of think about how... So you're there thinking, I'm not going to be captured. I either escape or die. Yeah,
Pretty much.
That's where you get to in your mind?
Yeah. None of us wanted to get captured. So it was always on the cards that we were going out. And the battalion commander wanted the battalion to try and get out. So generally, but once the decision had been made by Zelensky to, you could surrender, you can go, try and get back to friendly lines or negotiate your surrenders. So my platoon commander said, we're moving off. We just drove out. We made it quite a way out for about 40 minutes through Mariupol without a shot being fired, which was great. And then we got ambushed about 40 minutes out by aircraft, artillery, and basically there was small arms fire. There was casualties everywhere running around. Platoons took off in all directions, and I was carrying, I got asked to help by a medic woman who was carrying an injured officer from my platoon. Two of us helped him, and then we lost track of our platoon in the dark because it was about 3 in the morning when we decided to move off the position. So we lost them in the dark, and I was left with a medic sergeant and her orderly, another guy from our platoon, the injured guy, and then injured people just came out of the woods like pigs or zombies. It was just crazy. They were just shuffling out, really injured, bleeding. So we moved them all into a building near where we were dropped off. And inside the building where we moved into were more casualties on stretchers. Said, I can't find any food, can't see any Ukrainians, don't know where anybody is, don't know where we are. We've got no Wi-Fi, can't look on Google Maps. I know roughly where we are because I live in Mariupol, but I don't know the area in detail. So I said, I'm going to have to go. I'm British, I need to find my platoon. You're qualified to take these guys aren't going anywhere. I said, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make to leave them. But my duty was that I was British, I didn't want to be caught. And also, I knew my platoon was nearby. I'd lost them, but I knew that maybe I could find them. So I went out and left them. It was a really hard decision to do, but I said, I'm going to have to go, and she just went, go.
And then you needed to escape. Yeah.
I needed to escape. Well, I was able, I'd come out of that 6 weeks fighting with not a scratch, and most of my platoon, 60% of my platoon was either injured or killed. I thought, I can't find my platoon, I'm going to have to dump my body armour, my rifle. I'm never going to make 200 Ks without weight and ammo, I've not eaten 2 weeks, you know, a solid meal, so it's going to be a long struggle. And it's pretty hard to leave your big heavy stuff behind, because as a soldier you want to take it with you everywhere you go. And then I'd had a plan, if I was captured, to surrender to a Russian officer and all these ideas, but that all went to the wayside when I got captured too.
Did you think at this point you might make it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You did?
Yeah, I was pretty sure. I've seen stories. 12 guys did actually make it, the 200-kilometre tab. I've lost my platoon. Right, hey-ho, so I've got to try a new objective. I've got to try and get to friendly lines. Eventually I hit a road on there, and then I could try and find my way to Zaporizhia and friendly lines. And maybe I'll pick up some mobile signal on the way, and then I can get a good idea where I am on the map when I get out. And then they captured me just coming over the crest of this hill. I walked straight into a forward observation point, which could have been a mortar crew or something like that. I didn't even see them in the tree line. They just fired a warning shot at me, which gave me enough time to duck down and chuck my phone into a pond and make sure I wasn't captured with my phone and hold my hands up.
So now are you thinking, this is it, I'm going to die?
Yeah, I pretty much planned to surrender to an officer, but they called me forward. Then I was pretty much taken to what would be a section commander on their position, who drove me to a company-sized place, about 10 minutes away from where I was captured. I didn't put up a fight, there wasn't any point.
Were you terrified at this point, Shaun?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to control it, but by that time you know what's coming. You know you're going to have to take a few licks. You know what I wasn't expecting was to be stabbed in the leg by what looked like Russian police of some sort. They knew the value of me quite early doors, I think.
Okay, so you're valuable to them because you're also a British soldier, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Okay, so you're valuable, but they then beat you badly.
They still beat me badly.
And you're stabbed.
Yeah, first of all, the guys, before they took me to what was like a tiled floored room, looked like a wet room. the guy wanted to see if I had any right-wing tattoos on me, so stripped me down, started cutting off all my clothes. Not before, but straight away he just stabbed me in the leg and then proceeded to do that. He just went, oh,
Were you
and I was
bleeding
just
badly?
bleeding everywhere, all over my legs. I was screaming, and I haven't got any right-wing tattoos, and, you know, but he just kept shouting Nazi. And then they took me for about, I would say, about half hour, 45-minute drive to a tiled building, tiled floor, which was like a wet room in an office, where they just, as soon as I got there, my legs to the chair like this, and then I felt the clips go onto my little fingers, which I knew instantly what that was. And then they didn't say anything for a bit.
What was that, Shaun?
Well, they first guy said, "Do you want to phone home?" And I didn't quite understand the connotation. And then I had 200 volts go through me on the chair. I couldn't feel my leg anymore. I was literally standing up in the spot, electrocuted me in there. And they didn't really ask me any questions. It was like, you're a Nazi, you're MI6, you're SAS, and it was just really, they weren't really after an answer. Everything was, you're lying, you know. And then they'd electrocute me 2 or 3 more times after that.
With this wind-up telephone,
with wind-up telephone, yeah. I assume it was. I don't really see it.
Was it excruciating?
Yes. You feel like your muscles are popping out of your body. God. And the next day, my legs inflated very badly. The blood was coming, capillaries were going, leaking blood through my legs. When I took my thermal off, I was just bleeding from my leg from the electric shocks. And my legs had inflated to about, I couldn't walk, they were about this big. Yeah, it was very tough. They'd actually not got a good grip on my little finger, so they put them on my thumb as well, and then started to electrocute me on the thumb, which was really, really intense. But all the time, because I could hear in Russian, they were saying he's a person of interest, we want him moved off. So I knew I had to get through that, and provided a heart attack or anything, I just had to really get through the pain of that, and the beating where they punched my leg, where it just been stabbed. So then they played me back the video of me getting electrocuted, where I had a Ukrainian flag on me. I don't even remember putting it on it. They'd put yellow and blue tape over my head so I couldn't see. And then he said, "This is you, you're dead on the internet." They showed me a picture of my passport, which had deceased on it, which they then sent around on the internet. And then they said, "You're dead on the internet." And then he showed me a playback video of my torture, which was really, really, and I was kind of hoping, please post it, please post it. I'll still look for it now, so it can add to the evidence
Of war crimes.
Of war crimes, basically.
When they said you're deceased on the internet, do you then think, oh, no one's going to come and get me?
Well, it didn't. I didn't.
You're just out of it at this point,
They didn't
right?
know I spoke a little bit of Russian, so I could hear somebody on the phone sort of saying, "Yeah, he's wanted. He's a person of interest." So I was really, by that time, after sort of 2 electric shocks, dribbling on my own chest and twitching. So when they played back the video, there was me just twitching. My arm was just twitching through the muscles contracted. I couldn't really string 2 words together. It was just, I remember just being so tired after that and scared because it was unpredictable. But when I heard him say he's a person of interest, he's moving, I just thought, I've got to get through this, got to get through this. But they didn't realise I understood.
And you're put on trial. It's a puppet trial.
It was, yeah.
I've seen the pictures of it. I mean, you look...
50 days of just bread and water. If we were lucky, we got bread.
It's frightening to see, like I see you now, and then you're in a really bad way. You're so thin, your head shaved, you look malnourished, you look really unwell. Were you quite broken at that point, Shaun?
No, not at all.
You weren't? Okay.
I was very... I thought we'd starve before we'd ever get to trial. That was the only... I said to people, when I talk about this, I said the food and the starvation was the hardest part.
Then they sentence you to death, but at this point, you think this isn't, I'm getting out of here. So I mean, in that moment, did you feel afraid, or did you think they'll never...
Well, I was kind of hoping there was an appeal system, which they told us there was, so we weren't going to be put to death straight away. We knew, again, we had value now. They were up in the ante. Don't get me wrong, I was worried, because at some points we were just thinking, we're never going to get out of it. And it's just getting worse. So, you know, there was talk about how they were going to shoot us. The guards would give us, you know, crap every day saying we're going to shoot you with a British bullet.
But then you get this prisoner swap deal. Now, that happens between Russia and Ukraine. It's brokered by the Turks and the Saudis. It takes place in September. Did that just come out of the blue to you?
We were just settling in for the afternoon and they said, roll your stuff up, you're going.
Wow.
And it was just initially the best time. We'd heard we might be going. Nobody actually said. The guard said, I think you might be getting exchanged. So we were like, great, fantastic. We were all put in a cell together for the first time. We were told to wait, and then it was the worst journey.
Can you tell us about this horrific ordeal you have before you get to the plane?
Well, we'd only got outside the prison camp and handed over to some guys who then just proceeded to beat the crap out of us getting onto the vehicle. I got a scar here where I was just rammed into a door. They hooded us and put us in stress positions on the back of the truck. So we linked in, and it's like a chain. So basically, a handcuff to with plastic, like a masking tape around. I'm bleeding down my face, tasting blood where they just rammed me into the door. And then we pick up Aiden at another prison in the Croatian and loads of Ukrainians. So I think, well, what's going on here? So we travel for about an hour, all in the back of this vehicle. It's very hot, really hot. And then we were separated from the Ukrainians. We started to worry a bit then. Hold on a minute, why we've been separated? We were still being beaten on this truck, but it got less and less the more we moved into Russia. Some of the guys thought we were going to Zaporizhia, but I had to tell them that I live around here, I know where we're going, and there's lights, and I can hear small prop propeller aircraft coming over above, and I was thinking there's a no-fly zone over Mariupol, so we're definitely in Russia. And over the course of the night, we were there from 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we got to Rostov about 9 o'clock in the morning, the following morning, still in the position we left on this back of this transport, you know, bleeding. It was only when we got off into the terminal I saw how bad everybody was. I had blood all down my face.
You've just told me this story, the ordeal, right, what you went through, and then you're about to get to freedom, and then there's another beating, and you must have thought, am I actually going to freedom or am I going to my death?
We were like, knew we were in Russia because they were all Russian fatigues and everything. So generally, we didn't really know what was happening. And when we went to the terminal, it just confused things even more. There were Saudis guys walking around, Arabs walking around the terminal, and we just thought, are we being sold on? What the hell's happening here? Where are we going?
Now you get on the plane. Is this the moment you think, I'm going home?
No.
Okay.
We were still unsure, and we just thought, anyway, it's got to be better than here. And we got marched one at a time onto the plane. It was an unmarked plane, so we were even more worried about where we were going and what we were doing. But then these guys in suits met us on the plane. They were really nice, and then we got moved into these chairs that were like lazy boys on an aircraft. God. And suddenly it was like plush gold trim and carpets, and we were like, what on earth is going on here?
Have you been cleaned up at this point?
No, we were still
you're on this luxurious plane, like covered in blood.
Yeah. And then, while we were sitting down, the Saudis had told us basically the door had shut, and they said, "You're not free until you get to Russian airspace, but you're free." And that's when we knew. We just broke down, a lot of us, and really upset that we, you know, after what we'd just been for, pretty much. And then I went to the toilet to put on these clothes they give us in a bag once we'd taken off. We had food, you know, we were starving.
Did you have a beer?
No beers are Saudi flights, so there's no beers on there. We had cigarettes though, we were allowed to smoke on the plane, which was amazing. I came out the toilet and this guy looked at me and went, "Where are you from?" I said, "London." I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "London." I said, "You know, I look like Roman Abramovich." He said, "I am Roman Abramovich." And I just went,
surreal.
Yeah, and then I quickly said, "Why didn't you buy at West Ham?" And he straight away said, "Because Chelsea's closer to my house."
I'm
and
glad.
That was my first introduction. So we were just eating and smoking and chilling and just thinking, wow, we're out.
And what about Abramovich? I mean, on the one hand, you must have been extremely grateful that he helped broker your release. But on the other hand, he's been a long-term friend of Putin, who I imagine you absolutely detest.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I thanked him. He explained to me they're working more in humanitarian aid for the war and the people that are affected by the war. Yeah. Told me what his group's doing, which, you know, I'll be indebted to whatever part he played in it. I don't hate Russians. I hate Russian foreign policy, by extent the army in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe that all Russians support this war. Even though with what's happened to me, I don't think you can hate a whole nation. I know from experience that there's humanitarian aspects to the other side, even if they do believe in Putin.
And Putin?
Yeah, my personal belief is that there can't be any peace while he's in charge. You can't trust him. He's false narratives, even on me, to get an agenda out there that we were all Nazis is just horrendous. And to think we were mercenary terrorists when he's got Wagner, who are a whole, private group of soldiers, which is very hypocritical. And also, DPR have foreign fighters fighting for them that believe in Russia's cause. So, to go for all that and be tortured and ridiculed on propaganda, I don't think I could ever forgive those guys. Yeah. But deep down I want an end to resolve to this. But I want Ukraine to win. I want my home back in Mariupol.
And you're home now. That must have been your home in the UK. But
Yeah.
You've obviously got your home in Ukraine. You
Yeah.
want to go back there. Larissa is there.
Yeah.
How hard was it to come back to the UK? Or was it just a massive relief to be at peace again?
Both. It was a relief to get back to the UK, to be out of that.
Yeah.
But part of me was really upset that I didn't get exchanged with the rest of my guys I'd spent so long with.
You were also awarded the Order of Courage by President Zelensky.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Really good to get some recognition. We got a presidential decree for selfless acts in the sovereignty and the defence of Ukraine. So it was really nice to get some sort of recognition for the time. But we're still dealing with Mariupol. It's not the prison time that's the thing. We're still dealing with Mariupol, which is we won't deal with till this war ends.
You will go home, if you can, to Ukraine. Is that home for you now?
Yeah, it's. I wanted to retire there before the invasion. Eventually, I wanted to settle down there. I love Ukraine. I've been there 5 years. I love the UK, but for me, I got so much enjoyment out of living in Mariupol, Dnipro, Kiev. I'd been out there for so long. I really did enjoy living out there. And my aim is that when this war finishes, we can still do that.
One day you think you're home on the left bank. Was it on the left bank you said you're home?
Personally, yeah. I want to liberate Mariupol, and I don't see why Ukraine should talk about peace yet with Putin, because one, he can't be trusted, and two, if there's the will to fight the Ukrainians and they want to push, and they're defending their homes. Their homeland. They've got nothing else. Yeah. One of the things I say to people is, how much of America or Norway or Britain would you be willing to lose to talk peace? Doubt if America would give up an inch, especially Britain wouldn't. So, Ukraine's exactly the same. It's Ukrainian. If we give an inch now, they'll come back in 3 years, 5 years, push a bit more, like they've done with Crimea.
Finally, we're all a year into this brutal war. The Ukrainians have inspired the world in their bravery. Before the war started, you talked to Sky News about the role of the army, and despite Russian military superiority over the Ukrainians, that they would give Russia a bloody nose. They've achieved more than that, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely more.
So you think they will be victorious?
It's going to be a slog and a real tall order. They need to continue support. I think if you asked any of the foreign fighters over there, they just want support. They never wanted boots on the ground. They just need support, and they do need that support.
And those fighter jets as well would be...
I'd love it, yeah. For me personally, yeah. I know the logistics behind it. I know how difficult it is to train, but that's not my part. I just want fighter jets then to be delivered in.
Your message to Putin?
I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, one day he'll be found out. Eventually he'll be found out.
Shaun, thank you for telling us your story. It's incredible. It's a miracle you're sitting in front of me.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
An extraordinary story. Shaun Pinner there discussing the traumatic events he's been through over the past year. I hope you found our conversation interesting. If you scan this QR code on screen now, you can watch all of our interviews online and all of the previous episodes of the show. And if you scan the QR code on screen right now, you can listen to Beth Rigby Interviews podcast. Each week, I take a look at the highlights of the interviews, and there are some extra bits and pieces in there too on my favourite subject of politics. That's on the Sky News app or wherever you get your podcasts. Well, that's all for today's show. Thank you so much to my guest, Shaun Pinner, and thank you for watching.